Hello and welcome to our Reboot review. I'm Paul,
And I'm Dave.
and this week we are discussing the episode The Tiff. This episode originally aired in the US on November 19th, 1994, and in Canada on November 26th, 1994. Why did it air later in Canada? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So, number one song in America this week, it's still I'll Make Love to You by Boys to Men. We're not even going to waste time on that, because
Yeah.
it's, well, it'll change eventually.
Mm.
We're going to move on to the number one film at the box office this weekend, and we're going to go by, because we live in Canada, we're going by the Canadian release date. So what was the number one movie at the box office this weekend, Dave? Well, I guess the weekend prior, because the 27th was like the weekend. But the week prior.
Mm. Um,
1994. We're coming up close to Christmas. It's not a Christmas movie, but
yeah, it was kind of my safe bet, though the one particular one I have in mind probably wasn't until a few years later. But then with the other ones that are around that time,
it's part of a big franchise. Although not as big anymore, it's kind of dropped off a bit.
hmm, was it start there or was it more of a sequel?
Uh, okay. So this was a sequel, but also kind of like a transition film.
Hmm. Okay.
Any
Shoot, that
ideas?
doesn't narrow it down from those particular sorts of series.
I'll give you one more hint. It originally started as a TV series.
Shoot, that's still a little bit open-ended with the couple particular TV series that were running at the time that I could think of.
All right, I don't think you're going to get it, so I'm just going to tell you. It is Star Trek Generations.
Okay, that's understandable. But additionally, I'm also not a Trekkie, which is surprising because some people in my family are.
Generations is
It's supposedly a thing that I have no knowledge of.
yeah, it's a pretty good Star Trek film, I would say. Like it's not bad, but like it could have been better, but it's not terrible, I would say.
Like supposedly it's good, but it kind of caused the traditional thing of there's the traditional Star Trek fans, there's the generation fans, there's the new Star Trek fans, and then there are those other particular Star Trek fans, and then the other particular Star Trek fans. It's just kind of a thing that happens within fandoms.
Well, it's kind of like it's it's meant to be kind of the handoff from the original cast to next gen.
Mm.
But there's some issues with it.
As there most likely is. It's mostly kind of the question of which they are, but also kind of the case of this is not a Star Trek channel.
Well, I mean, it could be though, Dave. It could be. Anyway,
It could be, but let's get back to the task at hand.
alrighty. So the Tiff. This episode involves Bob and Dot being insufferable. Oh wait, that's most
Yeah.
episodes.
Yeah, kind of the typical sort of mechanic of okay, we have all these particular characters, the typical guy, girl, young child, other protagonistic things. What sort of stories could we come up with? How about an issue where they start arguing with each other? We could come up with a better idea than that, can't we? Could do an episode where they argue about each other. It's like, okay, fine.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that's this episode in a nutshell.
they're arguing, and then Enzo comes up with like some schemes to try to get them to rekindle their friendship, and then Enzo gives up, and then the Starship Alcatraz game forces the two to work together, and that's all that happens.
Yes.
Although I will say that the Starship Alcatraz game kind of looked interesting. I was like, ooh, I would have played this in 1994.
It was definitely fairly interesting, though. It was an interesting sort of a case of they had the player characters model as a typical polygonal sort of shape that looks like either a player character or an enemy character, and then they have all the other particular prisoners within the game. It's like random spider creature that's standing all weirdly, like random blobs, a box. And it's like, I wonder if it's a case of them trying to come up with particular designs or they just had a lazy day.
I think it's probably a bunch of background assets they already had made, and we're like, hey, we can just throw these in and save time and money.
Yay, lazy day for all.
I will say, okay, so first off, the player character model.
Yes.
And it looks like a character model from, like, Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, that matches.
It's, it's not pretty.
Yeah, no. But it's also kind of the case of they could get away with it with the particular game styles that they could possibly throw in for it.
I
And
just,
again, it goes up from here, so it's not the worst thing you're probably going to see. Or it may be, who knows?
I find it so funny that they're like, oh, look at how beautiful our main characters are, and then look at this piece of shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look great. Anyway,
But nevertheless, I do have to make a comment about this episode. We get our first appearance of one of the particular characters I absolutely adore within this series.
who?
We get an introduction to Bob's roommate slash supposed appliance of Mike the TV.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I forgot about that.
So, out of curiosity, Paul, do you by chance have any particular memories of Mike the TV?
I remember, like, the design, but I don't remember much else about him.
That's probably for the best, because the one reason I like him is because he tries to help the best he can, but his help is essentially just infomercials. Every infomercial or commercial that you could possibly ever conceive.
Yeah, I have, like, vague memories of this, but I don't remember much of it.
But nevertheless, he's a marvelous slapstick and additional character that occasionally has a moment or two within the show, and it's always fun to see him.
Alrighty. Well, yeah, this was a fine episode, I guess. Like, it's a pretty standard episode for, like, a kid's show. Like, hey, these two people argue, and then they have to work together, and that solves their problems. And I feel like every kid's show does this, but that's fine. Like, there's nothing, like, bad about this episode.
Like, I think the one particular sort of thing was the advice that Enzo gets from Fong is the case of either putting them into a dangerous situation to resolve their issues and or apologizing. And amazingly enough, he runs through both, but they both fail because they're simple child's ways of thinking of the problem.
Yeah, it's yeah, can we just banish Enzo to, like, a floppy disk or something? Because I really hate Enzo.
Well, there's the possibility, but sadly the series probably wouldn't last that long if we lost one of the high-end characters.
I mean, but does he actually contribute anything to the series? I feel like he's just kind of there most of the time. Although, in the next episode, he will have more to do.
That is very true. But additionally, maybe sit on that question for a while.
Oh, God. It's gonna get worse, isn't it?
You're not wrong!
Oh, God. Okay. Well, do you have anything else about this episode, Dave?
No, I think on whole it's interesting enough. It gives a couple of interesting ideas, as well as some marvelous characters. But again, it's a kid's show for how they've been going about the last couple of episodes, so it works, but nothing super groundbreaking.
Alrighty. Well, until next time, I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.
Next time, we'll be discussing the episode In the Belly of the Beast, which sure did exist.
Yeah, yeah. I sadly thought it was one episode, but sadly we'll have to wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, see ya.
See yes, yes.